Welcome back to Curiosity, Not Judgment. My name is Birga.
And I'm Gary.
So, I have been in the middle of some difficult conversations with a variety of folks over the last number of days, and I really began to think about what we as individuals bring to the table when we have disputes or conflicts, or I guess even pleasant conversations, right? We all come with some of the items from our past in our backpack, figuratively speaking, as we approach any given new relationship. And so, what does that mean in terms of the things that we are toting with us, the impact that has on our own mentality, and how it has the potential to really impact our engagement with one another?
I only bring good things to conversations. I don't know
Good
what
for
this
you.
thing you call baggage is, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, I sometimes do. I fight with my AI, my Claude. I say, "Hey, where's the context on this? Go read my brain. Go read this. Go get this context. Figure out who I am before you respond." And so I want it to have context. But the amount of stuff I bring around with me and the fact that I don't look at it very often,
Mm,
I'm probably dragging a pretty big sack behind me of stuff, don't you think?
I would imagine. And I'm not saying that as a knock on you. I think we,
Well,
we all do.
exactly.
I was looking at something this morning for work social media posting, and I see this story come up. I don't know how much of it is accurate, but I've heard parts of this before. But it's about the actor Kelsey Grammer.
Okay.
So Kelsey Grammer's sister was murdered when she was, I don't know, 16 or 18 years old, and it started his life
Wow.
on a very different trajectory because of the trauma that he endured.
Mm-hmm.
And then, this particular article went on to say he lost his father and then stepbrothers within a number of years, and so he had death and trauma after death and trauma while being a performing artist, while studying at Juilliard, while being, a Shakespearean whatever. And so many people would look at him and the performance that he would give and paint their own backstory about
Mm-hmm.
him, that he comes from a life of privilege and
Mm-hmm.
associating the Juilliard and the Shakespearean monologues, not knowing that he had been through all of this horrific heartbreak and loss. And I think for anybody that we don't know well, we make a lot of assumptions about what they're bringing to the table and why they act the way that they do or why they respond the way that they do. And not knowing what their baggage is really causes us to probably start from a position of judgment rather than curiosity. But I do like what you said about us even having to analyze and evaluate our own baggage and
Mm-hmm.
what are we choosing to continue to carry with
Mm-hmm.
us. And I think
Mm-hmm.
both of those points of conversation can be explored today.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting stuff. And we I know that sometimes I will walk into a meeting intentionally trying to bring certain stuff and not others.
Hmm.
We could call that a mask. We could call that a way of being. We could say, like when I start a presentation, sometimes I was just at a conference in Sacramento talking about storage with respect to data centers.
Mm.
And, I need to start out with some kind of street cred, right? Either someone's going to read an introduction about me,
Mm.
or I should start with something. I usually start with something humorous or a story to try to jolt people into thinking instead of just sitting there. But it is funny that now that I think about it, I probably intentionally and subconsciously bring in baggage,
Certainly.
bring in context
Hmm.
of a way that I want to present myself or a way that I want to be, which I need to probably give some more thought to.
Well, and I like that you said that there are some intentional things that you're bringing in, but then also the subconscious
Yeah.
things, right? So maybe you got in an argument with a spouse or a child earlier in the day, and that is going to have an impact on the way that you project yourself and you interact with others. And maybe you do have a history of some other things that are kind of buried down deep, but somebody comes forward and they're wearing something or they have a smell, a perfume or a cologne or they're carrying something with them that is a mental trigger,
Mm-hmm.
conscious or otherwise, that puts you back into a space and time, and you find yourself changing your emotional barometer based on these factors.
Totally. And I remember reading something many, many years ago. It said something about, have grace with everybody you meet. You don't know what they're going through.
Sure.
And that seems to be temporal or in the moment or environmental. But yeah, when you add in the multipliers of past baggage, past traumas, micro traumas, things that have happened to people in the past, what their experience is, both good and bad,
Sure.
that all kind of makes us who we are, right? And why each one of us is unique.
Yeah. In the very literal baggage conversation, I was thinking about the history of luggage.
Hmm.
We went from, the era of traveling in the 1800s with giant trunks,
Mm-hmm.
and, people travel was so expensive and so, maybe once in a lifetime that you're traveling with all of your belongings, right?
Yeah.
Trunks and trunks and trunks. And so you see some of the depictions in old movies of, stacks, and you've got the servants bringing in all of these things. And fast forward to the invention of little wheels on the bottom of your suitcase so that you can take it through the airport, to now, like, who knows how many podcasters and vlogs and YouTube channels around how to pack everything you need for, a month in Europe in a backpack. We can choose how much baggage or luggage we're going to take with us on any particular journey. And to your point about needing to routinely check in to see what it is that we're carrying, you know, how do we get to that point of some self analysis to say, okay, I've been carrying all of these crates and things for all of these decades. It might be time to sort through my things, scale down. There's inevitably going to be some of those items you cannot get rid of, but how can you downsize into a backpack so that you're only taking the essentials moving forward?
And that brings up the phrase "travel lightly,"
Mm-hmm.
right? And I know it's funny because I recently went from a drag roller uh, carry on to one that's upright because I got so good at packing so much in my carry
Mm.
on that it's actually really heavy.
Mm.
And it's easier if it's upright and I
Okay.
roll it on all four even if I drag it through
Yeah.
airports, which
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do a lot. So I'm just thinking about that. However, we run into places, and we did last year in Europe, and we did, and we when we go to South America, that they weigh the
Mm.
those carry-ons, and it's like, oh, well, that's different. Well,
Yep.
now I have to evaluate. So
Mm.
what if we all had the attitude of, you know what, I need to travel more lightly. I'm going to evaluate what I'm carrying around with me,
Mm.
and I have a weight limit,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to stick to that weight limit because I want to travel
Mm-hmm.
and I want to do the right thing. This is a good analogy because if I want to be effective in conversations, if I want to be thinking about others more than myself, if I want to be thinking about how I can add value in a situation and be additive versus extractive,
Mm.
doesn't that mean I need to evaluate the amount of baggage I'm carrying around?
Absolutely. And I think time also helps to dictate the importance of what it is we thought we couldn't let go of.
Yes.
And we might be able to scale down and get rid of some of those things after time has elapsed and based on new sets of circumstances. And you and I both have, in the history of this podcast, talked about our respective cancer diagnoses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a time when that topic was much more front and center for me, and it was really impacting a lot of things in my world, and it was impacting the way that I was having conversations with certain folks. But now with time, it's not nearly as
Mm-hmm.
present. And so is that one of those rocks I can take out of my backpack? I mean, it's still always going to be part of my past. It's always going to be part of your
Mm-hmm.
past, but how much weight do we need to allow it to have as it's on the journey with us?
Well, and I think more importantly than how much weight is it good or bad? Good or bad is a judgment. Is it useful to bring around with
Mm.
us? Like the three things that I learned from my cancer, which was the the most important time is now. It's the present. Can't do
Mm.
anything about the past or the future. The most important person is the one standing right in front of you, and the most important thing you can do is add value to that person.
Mm.
That was useful. That came out of my experience of going through my cancer, and I want to keep that with me.
Yes.
That was a good thing that came
Yes.
out of it. But there's probably other things
Mm-hmm.
that came out of that that I should probably jettison and get rid of.
Right.
And so I think where you're bringing this up, and I think it's a good point, is how do we evaluate
Right.
what we're bringing? What can we do to think about the very important context that makes us who we are?
Mm.
When does that? Let's just use context for the positive things and baggage for the negative
Okay.
things. How do we keep the good context that's useful to others and that we can now help other people going through cancer, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
other people who are following us, and yet jettison and get rid of the baggage from that doesn't do us any good and isn't going to be useful or helpful to anyone else?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I've got a quick answer to that. I'm going to explore that with more questions, more curiosity. So I was having a conversation with somebody today about people who find themselves working in the social services sector. And many people who are drawn to work with marginalized populations have had some degree of exposure to pain and trauma in their own life, which is why they feel compelled to help others. So, looking at that example that you just gave, maybe you had a past where there was some abuse.
Mm-hmm.
You are no longer in that place, but you came through it and you have been deeply impacted by it and feel like you can be a voice of guidance or counsel to other people experiencing that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So the abuse is never good.
No,
The fact that you went through it is not good.
no.
The fact that you can be a listening ear and maybe a guiding voice is a positive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that the item itself can be weighed as an asset versus a liability, or I forget the two words that you use, baggage versus
Context. Uh-huh.
yeah. And so I think it depends on where you are and how you want to operate in relationship with other people and what does that item do in the midst of all of it.
But it's never the event, is it? It's how
Mm.
we responded to the event. It's how we reacted to the event that matters.
And maybe not even it at the time, even now,
Yeah,
how we are responding to that thing
exactly.
from the past.
And or what you mentioned earlier, triggers.
Yeah.
This event in the past happened to me, and so now is that a trigger? And
Mm.
is that a trigger for good or for bad? And et cetera, et cetera. I think I go back to I've had some pretty significant trauma in my life,
Yeah.
and you know when you there's a whole area of psychology called positive psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and their whole point is let's not study people who are in rubber rooms or animals to figure out how we should act. Let's study people who are you know happy, successful, positive, and are able to add value to others and see what they did, because oftentimes the same event happens to two different people and
Mm-hmm.
they take different paths.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen that. So how can we? So saying an event happened gives you no indication of the future outcomes of that
True.
person.
True.
So if that's true, how can we say, look, this event happened? That does not determine the rest of your life.
Mm.
Heavily influences,
Sure.
but it does not determine.
Right.
What can you bring from that experience that is a positive experience for yourself and others? And what do you need to work on to leave behind?
Mm.
Not minimizing the event whatsoever,
Right.
not the point, but having come to the other side of that event, what can we do to turn that
Mm.
into positive context, to use that word, versus emotional baggage, the way we use that term, that is holding us back
Mm-hmm.
from our own happiness and or being useful to others.
Yeah. There's so much in this, and I have not studied psychology. I'm not operating in the therapy space. I do not want to pretend even for a moment that that's where I'm coming from. I just know that I work with a whole lot of people, and those people have a lot of hurts and hangups,
Mm-hmm.
and those hurts and hangups impact their ability to do their jobs with excellence sometimes, and it impacts the ability to see someone from a healthy lens. And so there are all kinds of things that are tied up in this topic. And so I do really like that notion of every once in a while just taking off our backpack and seeing what's in there.
Yeah.
And, to your point of there are going to be lots of elements that come forward from a life experience or a life event, especially a traumatic event. And we can't ever undo the things that have happened, but can we choose to pull the life lessons learned and the way that it shaped us and maybe empathy and a lot of the positive attributes that might have been birthed out of that event, and can we choose to leave the rest of it behind? And I could see people yelling at their screens right now. It's like, no, I can't choose that. It always is with me wherever I go. But I think that's where the time issue comes back that we mentioned at the beginning. Maybe the answer is no, I can't separate those things right now, but maybe in 2 years, or maybe in 5 years, or maybe in 10 years. And to do that routine check in to say, okay, I'm going to look at this trauma again, and how much of it do I need to continue to carry forward with me?
Well, and I think what you're saying is the answer is not no, it is yes.
Mm.
Given time, given processing, given um, uh, a way to try to get through it in the best possible way. Again, not minimizing any event or trauma that happens in someone's life, but how can we know that we can get through it. We know that we are through it, kind of, by basic definition, we are through it. How can we do it in a way that's healthy? And again, I would say that using curiosity, not judgment, is part of the key, because we can't tell other people how to grieve. Right. We can't tell other people how to get through their trauma. Mm-hmm. We can't even tell ourselves how to do it. Sometimes we wish we could get through something better than we are,
or quicker,
or quicker, yeah, or handle it better, or every time this thing happens, you know, becoming aware of it, and then deciding to deal with it, and then dealing with it. We have to give ourselves a lot of grace also. Sure. And to say, you know what, this is going to happen. I either try to avoid the situation, or if the situation is going to happen anyway, I'm going to realize up front that it's going to happen. I'm going to prepare myself. I'm going to have an escape route. I'm going to tell people, by the way, if this comes up, I might have to retreat for a minute. I think that's super healthy. As long as we don't get into judging ourselves or others and how we or they get through that process.
Yeah.
Or at what speed.
Right. I feel like this conversation could really go on for hours. So I'm trying to think of a kind of a succinct way to kind of bring us back to kind of a landing spot with this. But, to your point, we cannot control anybody else's response. Mm-hmm. We have nothing to say or do around someone else's trauma, what they're bringing in their backpack. We can evaluate our own stuff and sometimes successfully and sometimes unsuccessfully navigate that. But I suppose, in the vein of us trying to really use this platform to encourage curiosity in the midst of relationship, and especially in the midst of conflict, if you find yourself in a position where there is argument or there is a reaction that you don't understand, I think having that visual of your backpack and their backpack, mm-hmm, and understanding the two of you don't know what's in the respective packs, and there may be a need for kind of that timeout. And if you can vocalize that, say, hey, I think we're both bringing some things to the table that maybe we need to consider. Can we put that to the side for the purposes of working together on X? I don't know. What are your thoughts around that?
I had this great visualization of two backpacks fighting. And we realize, hey, it's the backpacks, it's not us. We can get along, but we got some stuff we got to deal with here. Or you walk into the room and stick your backpack on the table, yeah, in front of you, and the other person does the same, right? Yeah. And both the backpacks are fighting before we can even experience each other as human beings. I really like that visualization. I'm going to have to process that one a little bit, because I think that could, look, there's a lot of folks who walk into a room with predetermined baggage that it's going to be very difficult for them to come to a mutual understanding. if they're going to continue to wear the baggage? How can we pull things out and 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 rationally look at things and say, you know what, this is helpful in the situation or it's not, and put them aside to try to get to some kind of a resolution
Mm.
of a conflict with another human being or a challenge in our own lives or a reason why we're procrastinating on something. How can we analyze what's behind there? Because sometimes these things that are in our backpack, we don't even know they're there, right?
Certainly. And so, if you come to the family table or if you come to the business, boardroom table, wherever you find yourself, and you conceptualize that somebody has taken their backpack off and plopped it right there in the front, how do we posture ourselves in a space of curiosity, knowing that they've got their own set of judgments that they have come preloaded with?
Preloaded with. And I think that this comes back to, there's some people who say, well, I can't walk in and make a presentation there. There's people in authority there, and I have a problem with authority. Or
Mm.
I can't possibly speak there. That's the CEO of the company. It's like, hey, those are human beings. They're coming in with their CEO bag
Yep.
and putting it on the table.
Yep.
You know, why do you feel like you have to prove anything?
Mm.
Why do you feel like you have to, hide something that I think the more open and human we are in a situation, the less of that baggage gets in the way of a real and useful conversation.
Well, and I'm certainly not suggesting if you've got high levels of trauma in your background that needs to be exposed in a business
No,
setting or in another context. You're not going to, front load a conversation like, I'd like you to know that I was a victim of childhood abuse, and that's going to cloud the way that we are able to interact with each other. Of course not. And I'm not even, I hope I'm not appearing to make light of that, but I do think we have to give each other grace. I think that's the appropriate word, knowing that there are things that we all respectively bring forward to the table that impact the way that we are able to carry out life in general. And so that kind of check in with ourselves first to be curious about what am I coming in with, because maybe I'm coming in with my own defensiveness based on what happened over the breakfast table, let alone what happened last week, last month, or 10 years ago. And knowing, it's the same struggle for the person across the seat or across the table from you.
and a very practical way to do that is when you get in a situation, and again, I, I'm I'm going to say again, it's really cool if at the end of the day you can write down
Mm.
things that went well, things that didn't go well. And if you look at those things, look at the things that went well and celebrate them. Then look at the things that didn't go well and say, do I understand why? Do I
Mm.
get it? Is there something in my backpack that I really need to take out and look at?
Mm.
And with that practice over and over again, like a muscle, you can get better and better at that. It may seem like a chore. It's like, hey, look, I'm at the end of my day. I'm just going to put a television show on and I'm done. Okay, you're going to be like Groundhog Day and repeat the next day the same thing, right?
Mm.
So the unexamined life is not worth living, Plato said, or Socrates. So what can we do to kind of look at that in ourselves and give grace to other people?
Yeah, great questions. So I hope that front loads some of your own curious questions around relationships that you are navigating right now. And as always, we welcome you to come back for another episode of Curiosity Not Judgment as we just continue to dive in to how curiosity can really set the tone or change the environment, especially in tenuous relationships. And we always appreciate your time.
Take care and be well.